You're all very, very welcome to our first session of our new group, which is Never Mind the Buzzwords. And the idea behind this group is basically we wanted to create a space where, people can set aside an hour to get a bit of food for thought, learn a little bit about themselves and ways to improve their business, just discussing some things, sharing experiences and ideas, even, ideas that might not be fully formed. We want to create a sort of relaxed environment where you feel comfortable asking questions and discussing things and sharing ideas. So we're going to be having monthly sessions in relation to the people side of your business, right? So your professional development, leadership, team effectiveness, company culture, things like that. And then we'll also have another different session that will be monthly as well. And that's more on the process improvement side of things, right? So, mostly informed by lean practices and Jigsaw Better Business, as many of you might know. We're award-winning lean service providers. And so we provide training and mentoring in, lean through your enterprise office or your local enterprise office or through Enterprise Ireland. Some of you on the call today may have already be availing of that. If not, and you're interested, have a chat to us. But just, a few bits of, I suppose, general housekeeping as well before we get into it. At the moment, you're all muted, just, for the main part of the session, just so that there's not the background noise. But I would love to hear from you, and there will be time for Q&A at the end. So at the end, you'll be able to unmute yourselves. And as well as that, if you see reactions down at the bottom, there's an option to raise your hand. So if you do have a burning question or comment that you want to ask, feel free to just do that little raise your hand reaction, and we'll be able to answer your question then. We are recording the session, so we've had a number of requests from some people who weren't able to join live, including people all the way over in Australia. So the timing obviously didn't suit them, but so we'll be sharing that recording with anyone who has registered for the event. Just to mention as well, this is, as I said, the first of this session of this, first session of this group, but we will be having another one then in February. So the next one is on the 9th of February. We can just pop the link into the chat so that you have that. So as I say, 9th of February, we'll be kind of following on from this session. It's sort of like a part 2. So we'll pop that. Yeah, Veronica's just popped it into the chat there. So you can register on Eventbrite. So my name is Julie O'Sullivan. I can see some familiar faces and some that I don't know yet, but nice to virtually meet you all. I'm the head of people development with Jigsaw, and I'm a business psychologist. So that basically means that I aim to improve how people experience work. And I work with companies to help develop their things like their leadership capabilities, team effectiveness, and just enhancing their culture. And that kind of ties in with what we're talking about today. And we're talking about creating a effective or high performing culture in your organization or your team. And I am delighted to be joined by Nikki Daly. Nikki, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Nikki is an Irish Olympic hockey player and a Hockey World Cup silver medalist. She was a Dublin Gaelic footballer. She's also a mechanical engineer and a motorsport enthusiast. So she's a long list of accomplishments in her sporting career, and has also established Formula Female, which encourages more females to compete and get involved in motorsport, and highlighting the importance of STEM education in motorsport. So she's clearly someone who has a really good idea of what it means to, set and achieve goals, to tap into that drive and motivation and ambition, and to operate in high pressure, high performance environments. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about your experiences, Nikki, and I know that we can all learn from them and translate them into our own practices and businesses. And so thank you so much for joining us today. I have a few questions that I'd like to ask, and then, as I said, there'll be time at the end for Q&A. So you can feel free to pop any questions into the chat, or you can ask them at the end. So when we say culture, it can sometimes have a few different connotations. Like if we, go abroad, we might observe cultural differences in a different country. When I'm talking about culture, I'm usually talking about, in an organization, the kind of norms and behaviors. But Nikki, when you think of, say, your team's culture, how would you sort of define what culture is?
Well, first of all, I just like to say hi to everyone and thanks for having me today. I'm really looking forward to the conversation around Never Mind the Buzzwords, and particularly around culture. So it's great to be here, and I hope everyone enjoys and the insight that I might give into the Irish hockey team and a little bit about sort of our development of culture over the years. So I suppose I probably start with when I first started in the squad. So I spent 12 years on the Irish hockey team, and I'd say, the different players, different managers, environments, all that sort of thing, obviously dictate sort of how your culture is formed and what it looks like. And certainly at the start of my career, we sort of had this culture where probably quite outdated, where it was very much sort of a hierarchical system of, the senior players and the junior players. And it was, we sort of sat and got told what to do, and, you followed suit of what the senior players would say, or what they would, how they wanted to lead things. And that then changed very much sort of around 2014 when we got a new coach. And we developed what we called the Green Army culture. And I think when we talk about culture, it's it's one of those buzzwords we're all really familiar with it. We've all heard it. And, the things that we associate with culture are, values, beliefs, standards. And these are, these do make up a culture, and they are really important. But, and I think it's really easy to set a culture, as in define what our values are. We know what we believe in. We know what we want to value: hard work, commitment, all those things. And it's easy to set standards, but how do we actually live by those? And how do we, implement it into every day, excuse me, so that we make sure that we're not just kind of saying these words, that we're actually living by them, and that we have people living by them to create a better, team, essentially. So I think for us, we got to that stage, we set what our values were, we set what our beliefs were, what our standards were. But ultimately, it's getting people then to buy into all of those things. And how do you get people to buy into them? I think every single person in your team, regardless if it's a sports team or business team or whatever, everyone needs to have a purpose. Everyone needs to have a role. And it was something that when we developed the Green Army culture, we spent so much time on, was giving every single person a purpose. Everyone had a voice, everyone had an opinion, and it was respected. And I think, you can dive into all the different elements of it, but essentially what that culture was about the people. And the people became first and foremost. And then if the person's in a good place, and if you can develop the person, their hockey will naturally, flourish because of it. So I think we focused an awful lot of our culture around the people. And we do simple things like, obviously we had a lot of different meetings with psychologists and with our team, players meetings, team meetings, with management, without management. And it always came back to the person and how can we get the best out of you, and that comes down to even just when you go for dinner and you go for lunch with your team, you don't always sit with the same person. You can sit with somebody new, and you can learn a little bit about their own life, outside of hockey, so that the focus doesn't actually always become about this intense hockey, the goals, what we're trying to achieve. Because in order to do that, we need all the people to be in the right place, and we need them to buy into everything that we believe in as a team, and that we can actually make sure that these people are living by it each and every day, and help them to live by it, rather than you're not doing it and point it out in that kind of way and make it that it's oh, you're not following the culture, so we're gonna pick on you. It's more no, everyone, bring everyone together so that we can achieve it as one and make each and every individual stronger along the way. So in short, I think the culture for us became about the people, and really driving the values and the beliefs and the standards, rather than just talking about them, but actually holding ourselves accountable for them as well.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. That's really interesting. Actually, before I even go on to the next question that I have from that, if anyone else wants to just, pop into the chat, what does culture mean to you in your organization? Because, it might be different to everyone. So you don't have to put in a perfect definition, but, even just some words or phrases that you would associate with culture. So everyone in the audience, feel free to chip in. But yeah, there was a lot of really interesting points there, Nikki. And it's interesting you mentioned about the kind of what it had been before and then what it changed to. So what would be some of the differences that you really noticed, as in a great or really high performing culture, as opposed to maybe what it used to be, that more maybe hierarchical? Like what were kind of the main differences between those?
I think just everyone felt a little bit more valued and a bit more open to give their opinion, to have a say, to have an input in decisions that were made, so that it wasn't just sort of those that are there the longest make all the decisions, and we have to wait our turn in order to kind of feel like we can have an input into this team. And definitely, I've seen a massive shift in the younger players in the team today, when I was the oldest in the team, and what I was like when I was the youngest in the team. I'd be afraid to open my mouth. I'd be afraid to say anything or give an opinion. Whereas, it's great to see these young girls come in and straight away they're able to have that confidence to express themselves and to give an opinion. And I think that that's so powerful, because you can be in this environment for so long that you're so used to the ways and everything that you don't always see certain things. And having new people come in can be actually really refreshing to kind of open your mind to things that maybe you haven't seen, or ways that we're doing things that maybe aren't quite working. So you're always having this, I think one of the constants in a funny way was change, because you had all these fresh voices coming in and fresh opinions and fresh, like insights essentially into what the team was seeing and what we were doing. And that ability to be able to be open and honest with each other and receive, the different information, creating that environment where it wasn't a bad thing that somebody is opening their mouth. It was like, it was encouraged. We want to hear it. We want to, we'll work together to find the best way to move forward. And everyone has a purpose and a value in doing that, regardless if we have 1 cap or 300 caps, so
that's brilliant. Yeah. And I think that actually kind of reflects what we're sort of seeing in the research, and also just, anecdotally, is that, people are talking about, how do we manage Gen Z or millennials as opposed to the different generations? And it does seem like there is that kind of change of, like you say, regardless of what, your tenure, you have some kind of unique experience that you can bring to the table, and kind of recognizing that. I'm just seeing as well in the comments, team culture, for me, it means that people share the same values, work towards the same vision, and aim to support and build on team members' strengths and weaknesses. So I think that's a great kind of ideal in terms of what you can have as a team. Another comment there saying, I think the culture is the set of common rules, behaviors, and that's accepted by a group of people, and identifying them as a different or unique style of living. So it's kind of the norms, the behaviors, these kind of shared ideals.
And I think that like in that, then you set your standards. So like, but it's important that if you see somebody maybe not, working to those standards or living by those standards, like for example, in our sport, we would have set, specific and expected standards around fitness, around nutrition, around, your the work that you do outside to make like injury prevention exercises that is just like really, boring and long, and a lot of time you don't want to do it, but it was expected, and there were certain expectations there that we made sure held each other responsible for. And I think that there's a saying, the standards you walk past are the standards you accept. So if you see something and it's not up to the standards, you're actually doing not only that person a disservice, but you're doing your team a disservice, because you're recognizing something that doesn't live up to that standard, or the culture that you're trying to set. And if you don't do anything about it, well then, you know, you're actually doing it a disservice. So I think that it's, yeah, you know, we can set our standards, we can set our values, our beliefs, but it is about making people responsible and doing it in a way that it's, you know, not criticizing them, but, you know, you're doing it for the better of the team and for the individual as well.
Yeah. So kind of balancing that, being able to call it out in a respectful way, I suppose.
Yeah, I think like we all know that it's, you know, it's how you speak to somebody can have an impact. So, you know, it's, we can say things in a tone, in a way that can actually come across as being quite critical. But instead, if we can think about what it is that we want to say, know that we want to have the open and honest conversation, and sometimes those conversations can be difficult, and that's, I suppose, the challenge in driving on your culture and driving your standards and your behaviors and your beliefs, is that we don't always want to have some of these difficult conversations. But I would say that if you can think about what you want to say, figure out a way in a tone, in, you know, the way you want to get it across, the words that you use, how you use your words, so that you're not sort of feeling, the person's not feeling like you're telling them what to do. It's more, I'm trying to help you, and I want to help you, you know, in the way that you use your words and your tone, I think can make a huge difference. So yeah, I think that's an important part as well, is being able to recognize the standards and make sure that we're all personally responsible and helping each other to continue to live by them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think like something that I kind of sort of have it in my head as, it's like a balancing act between kind of courage and compassion, you know, so having the bravery to be direct or be clear, have those difficult conversations, but have the compassion to go, how is this going to land? Exactly. Are they in the right space for me to, you know, for them to even hear this right now?
Yeah. And I think like it's something that you learn as well over time. Something I especially learned is you have so many different personalities in the team, and you know, people react differently. Some people love you to be really direct and say it as it is, and they're like, no, I don't need any of this arm around me or anything like that. Just tell me what it is and I'll get my, you know, shit together or whatever. Whereas some people need it to be a little bit more compassionate around how you give the feedback and things like that. And I think understanding the personalities within your team and how you communicate with individuals is really important as well. And that do it in a way that respects them, and you're trying to respect how they receive feedback as well. So
exactly, yeah. So I suppose that's probably the case for anyone in business as well. There is no one size fits all when you're dealing with people. You know, what works for one might not work for another person. Exactly. But I suppose then when you're able to adapt those different, you know, approaches or strategies, then like we said at the start, each individual has a unique contribution to make. So, you know, if you're treating each person as an individual, you're getting all of those benefits.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I know there's examples in our team where, you know, some of the value that people brought away from the team, away from the pitch, you know, away from the tactics, the actual on pitch performance and things, like it was huge. So that, you know, you recognize that you had players in this squad who actually kept the togetherness more so off the pitch. And maybe that was more so their strength than on the pitch. But these people were so important for the culture of our team and the progression of our team that we needed them as much as we needed them on the pitch. We needed them nearly even more so off the pitch. And that, I think, became more and more evident as we went on, because everyone got more and more comfortable with expressing who they were away from the pitch, and everyone got to know each other from at a personal level a lot more than we used to. And we made it a big thing that we would especially want to understand and know people away from the pitch. I mean, you might not be best friends with them. You might not, you know, everyone will have their certain group that maybe they gravitate towards, but you always make the effort to sit down and chat to all of your teammates and know what's going on in their sort of their personal life, or you know, so then you recognize if they're down one day and you can just head over and be like, is everything okay? And sometimes that's all they need. You don't need to really say much, just to recognize that you see somebody that's not themselves can be make a huge difference.
Yeah. And I think kind of what you're describing just there is that that skill of empathy, you know. And I think that it's a funny one that sometimes people think, oh, well, you know, if I'm going to be empathetic, it means that I have to agree with everything they say, or I have to, you know, have all the answers to give to them. And it's kind of like you say, sometimes it is just checking in and just showing you're there for them and saying that, you know, what you're going through sounds really difficult, you know. And I think it's something that companies seem to, you know, be starting to recognize a little bit more, that you know, and that's again research and anecdotally, is it's kind of now there's less of a divide between home and work life. Sometimes, you know, there's less of a, okay, you're expected to leave your problems at the door, because there isn't really a door anymore, you know. So I suppose what you were saying there is all about, you know, creating the culture. You know, it seems like it's quite an intentional, you know, continual activity, as opposed to, yeah, we did our one session with the sports psychologist and then that's it.
Oh, definitely. Like, I mean, we worked so hard on that over the years. And I mean, we had, like, every Monday we'd have a psychology meeting where it was like a temperature check. You know, you just check in, how are we doing? You know, what happened in the week before? Is there anything that we need to address? Anything that we need to continue working on? And so, yeah, definitely, like, culture is not something that just kind of happens by itself. You do have to drive it and kind of, you know, revisit it regularly. And like, essentially it's communication around, you know, if there's anything that you feel is becoming an issue, is there anything that's starting to go a way that you don't want it to go, then it needs to be brought to the attention straight away. And the quicker that you can deal with it, the quicker you can move on and keep the, you know, the progression going. So we did so much work with our psychologists over the last couple of years. I suppose because our cycle is a 4-year cycle, the Olympics is the pinnacle. So things tend to kind of ramp up in the 2 years leading into that. And I think we did a lot of work in the last 2 years just trying to move from, you know, how strong we finished 2018 with the World Cup and how together we were as a team, and everyone recognized, geez, these girls, they just go out and they have fun. And that was a huge element of it. It wasn't that, like, we didn't focus intensely on the tactics and the hockey and what we needed to do. We did. But, you know, by having that culture of everyone's valued, everyone has a voice, everyone has the freedom to express themselves, it meant that there was no problem with, you know, enjoying it along the way. So, and I think that was another big difference from when I first started in the squad. It was very serious, and it's like, you know, you should sit there in the changing room and, you know, look like you're intensely focused, as in, like, you know, I better just look like I am, even if I'm not. Whereas, you know, it's so different to the changing room in the World Cup, where there's a full-on party going on, and there's like a rave, and there's music, and people are running around, and it's like, that's because they've done their prep work themselves individually, and there's that trust that, you know what, I trust that every individual in here has done their preparation, that they're ready to go, they're ready to perform, and that's a big thing as well. And maybe, you know, when I look back now at the first couple of years that I played and in the team and the environment I was in, maybe there wasn't that trust there, and so it had to be kind of, you know, go in there, do this, sit here, look this way, you know, don't smile, don't look like you're having fun, look serious, look intent, because, you know, you didn't want to be criticized in any way or given a reason as an excuse that that's why you didn't perform. And I think that has been a big difference as well, in terms of how the team is run, and the fact that it's the individual responsibility of the person to know their role, do their role, and do it to the best of their ability. So
yeah, that's I really like to hear that, you know, because I do think that, you know, laughter, it's something that can completely, you know, really help cope with stressful or difficult situations. And yeah, I think there is that idea that you can't have kind of fun and focus at the same time, but I think I think you can.
And I think balance is really important as well on that it's like, you know, you don't get so intense on the performance all the time, and understanding that you do need a balance, because if you're so intense and stressed on having the best ever performance, you're probably not going to perform at your best. So it's that understanding the mental side of it as well, and your mental side of the performance, and making sure, you know, you're mentally, emotionally, and physically in the right place, and you get the balance between all of those things to ultimately allow you to perform at your best. And I think if there's any sort of stress or too much intensity, you're probably going to limit how much you can give and the quality of what the performance will be. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is something that you know, people again in sport or in business are starting to become more aware of, is those kind of mental aspect of performance. And it's something that I've heard, and I'd be curious to know, just from kind of everyone who's attending here, I might just pop up a poll and just see in terms of the mental aspect of performance, and that should pop up in front of you. You know, since COVID, say in the last, 2 years or so, some people have mentioned that there seems to be more awareness from their workplace on the kind of more mental or emotional side of things. Others, maybe they're saying there's less awareness, or some are saying that there's no change maybe between it. So I'll give people a couple of minutes just to vote on that poll there. But I think like something that we, when we're watching a professional sport or the Olympics, we might be in awe of the physical challenges and skills that we're seeing. But what we don't always see is the mental skills or challenges. And as I said, I think it's being talked about more. Like I said earlier, it's not like leave your emotions at the door, because there's much more of a kind of blend between, home and work. I'm just seeing the responses coming in. At the moment, there's 81% of people are saying that there seems to be more awareness on the mental or emotional aspect of work. I'll just end that poll. Well, I think there's a couple more people answering, but I'll pop that up now so we can see there. So just about 78% of people there said there seems to be more of an awareness on the mental or emotional side of things, and 7% saying that there actually seems to be less, that maybe they're kind of going in the opposite direction. And some are, 16% are saying there's no real change, whether that's good or bad. There hasn't been much of a change for some people. So maybe Nikki, do you think you could talk a little bit more maybe about that, maybe mental aspect of performance, maybe in terms of, overcoming any particular challenges or any like learnings that you gained in particular?
Yeah. Well, I suppose like one of the challenges, and it goes back to, I suppose, talking about culture today, for us as a team, because our culture is very much about the people and the togetherness that we create, and being around each other and that sort of thing. We really felt the effects of COVID, leading into, we just qualified for the Olympics for the first time ever in November 2019. And it was this really exciting period where we were going to go to our first ever Olympic Games, and then the pandemic hit. And it was so strange, because we went from seeing each other all the time and being in those environments to, and that was a big part of our performance, I suppose. So we did struggle with, the COVID and all the restrictions and everything around that. And so when we got back together, it was like, we had to try and, bring it all back and try and pick up where we left off, which ended up being like 6 or 8 months after the fact. But I think the mental aspect of performance, particularly for me, has always been huge, because it's something I probably struggled with a lot. As naturally in sport, I was always quite capable. Like, technically I could play the sport quite well, but I would have struggled with the mental side in terms of confidence. And it took me a long time to I suppose change all those thoughts that I was having, these negative thoughts, the lack of self-belief, into building a confident player that I wanted to be, and that I knew that was inside me. And I suppose, how did I overcome those challenges? I think the first thing was having the awareness and recognizing that I wasn't probably fulfilling my potential, and that I needed some sort of help with being able to unlock it and get the best out of myself, because I could just continue to go down this self-sabotaging route of my career and never really showcase maybe what I knew I had inside. And so I decided to kind of worked with my uncle quite a bit on the mental side. He gave me this book around performance thinking, and it really helped me because I started to be more aware of what I was thinking. And my thinking was leading to how I behaved and how I ultimately performed. So I was able to kind of become more aware of what my thoughts were and direct, I suppose, my focus and my thoughts towards positive things and positive thoughts, so that could then translate into my behaviors and how I ultimately played on the pitch. And it was honestly transformative in my game. And I think we don't appreciate enough the mental side of the sport, and how, something that's said to you or something that happens can change how you perform. And that can be in business as well. So making sure that you have, an ability to maybe overcome those challenges and recognize how you're thinking and how that can affect your behavior and how it can affect ultimately how you perform is vital. Because if you can't recognize it, you end up getting frustrated. You end up sort of maybe taking it out on others and not really dealing with it. So yeah, the mental side is huge. And it comes to having maybe a process in place that you can always fall back on when things aren't going your way. That as long as you can stick to a process that has worked in the past, it's in time, like it might not work all the time, but more times than not it will, and it'll help you overcome whatever challenge you're facing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then kind of like you said about confidence, the more you do something, the more it adds to that. So it's kind of building up that bank experience.
When you bank that and you see how you manage to overcome it, it gives you unbelievable confidence, and it gives you confidence that you can do it again. It's not to say that you're not going to have a setback or you're not going to be faced with a challenge, but it gives you the belief that, okay, well, if I could do it once, I can do it again. And I think that it's really rewarding as well when you've worked really hard on something that's not easy to always see the results from, but when you do, it's quite empowering, I think, to go forward.
Yeah, I think that that's an interesting one as well, what you said there about kind of like your confidence in your ability to get over it. It's not that you'll never experience a setback or never experience a problem, but that you have confidence in your ability to get through that, or to improve, or to learn, or to develop. I think sometimes when people think of confidence, it's like, oh, I need to just know everything or be able to do everything and then I'll have confidence. But it's actually, I think it's that confidence in your ability as a learner, to develop in that kind of way. You mentioned a book there. What was the name of that?
It's called Performance Thinking. So it's basically just how you think, determines how you behave, and how you behave obviously determines how you perform. So there was a lot in that really helped me. So I just saw the author is Dr. Jacques Delire. So if anyone's interested, it's a great book. I carry, I brought it to every tournament that I ever went on since 2013, I think it was. And
brilliant.
I can still look at it every now and again.
I do think it's often that changing the viewing can change the doing. It's that rather than the just doing a behavior, kind of, okay, well, my coach told me to do this, so I'm going to do that. But if you're coming from the without having done the mental work, it's a bit harder to just work on like behavior. I think the viewing and the mindset is really important as well. I can see that a few things have come in the chat in terms of questions and comments, which is great to see. I'll just kind of scroll up a little bit and see what people are asking. Let's see. So Maeve just asked a question to me saying, how can you ensure that culture still allows space for diversity and doesn't lead to groupthink? Everyone just nodding their heads and agreeing with everything that people are saying.
Yeah, I think that goes back to having this sort of open forum where everyone's opinion is like wanted and encouraged, so that it's not just the same voices in the room, maybe, saying things and everyone's kind of going, oh yeah, well, if they're saying it, I better agree. It's having that, and we had so many player meetings where, we would, the topics would be there and it'd be like, let's discuss. And everyone give their opinion, everyone have an input, everyone have a say. And I just think encouraging it as much as possible to hear from everyone. And even like there's people that don't have, maybe there's people in the room who just don't have huge opinions all the time, and they're okay to just kind of go, yeah, I'm okay to kind of go along with whatever. And you'll have those people, and then others will be quite opinionated and they'll want to share their opinion, and that's great. And I think allowing people to express themselves, no matter how great or small that expression is, that's what you want to create. You want to allow that, that flexibility, that no matter who you are, what your differences are, that they're respected and they're taken into consideration. And it's the making up of all these different differences within people that ultimately makes your culture and your team.
Yeah. So kind of, I'm sort of hearing like setting that expectation that each person is going to have a voice, whether you want to say 2 sentences or 10, there is the expectation that you'll be heard.
Yeah, like we would often do, and especially when like new people come into the squad, we'd often do these kind of exercises where it was like, okay, we'd sit in a room and, what does Sarah bring to the, what do I see in Sarah? Like, what do I think she brings to the squad? And I would say and then somebody else would say something else. And so before you know it, there's so many different qualities that we all see, and we all see it differently in this one person. And so it was always good to kind of, and we do it like before major tournaments, everyone would write 2 things that they thought about you, and they'd give it to you. And you had this envelope of all these things. And it was like, oh God, I didn't realize this person thought this about me. And, it was like, okay, yeah. And it gives you that knowledge, and that, that, okay, I really do have something to give here. Like my teammates see it. And it's because everyone has a little bit of self-doubt every now and again. You wonder, God, am I good enough? Am I doing the right thing? Am I working hard enough? Am I whatever? Am I bringing enough to the table here? And just doing an exercise like that can actually be so powerful to go, holy God, yeah, okay, this is great. I'm all these different things, and that's given me, great encouragement to keep going, and a boost of confidence and motivation nearly to do even more.
So that feedback is probably really valuable. And I suppose as well, sometimes when people do those kinds of things, they might get some, negative feedback in terms of, ways to improve. And I think it's important to kind of go, okay, yeah, this is how I see myself, and there's a difference. It's not that I'm wrong or they're wrong, but if this is what they're seeing, is that what I want them to see? And if not, I can kind of change that. But
we would always as well, like especially during training, that was like I remember when we got this new coach, Darren, and it was like back in 2013 when we were creating this kind of green army culture. And Darren would sort of, because we were so bad at calling each other out on certain things in training, like as in, there was like 10 balls that were, hit the wrong direction, or like the accuracy was just so bad, like the quality was so poor in the exercise. And he was just like, I honestly can't believe that you're all just accepting this. You're all just accepting this. You're just going through the motions of this drill for 20 minutes. And for 20 minutes, there's been absolutely no quality whatsoever. And you're all just like robots going from one station to the next. And it was like, this is why are we here? Like, what are we doing? This is not helping us get better. And it was really difficult for us to kind of, because at the start then we were just like barking at each other saying, this is terrible. Like, what are you doing? And then we had to kind of realize, okay, well, we can't actually speak to each other like that as much as we wanted to be better. It's like, and so we had to develop these ways of communicating, and like that, like with how we gave our feedback and being mindful of what we were saying. And it was difficult because we weren't used to it. But it was so good then, because especially in training, that's when you want to do it, and you want to learn how you communicate. So then if you're in a pressure situation in a match, you're not barking at somebody. You're okay, yeah, I've done this before. I know how to communicate. I know what I want from them. Give them a clear message. Give them, confidence that the next time will be good. They'll do it, well the next time or whatever. And so it was, it's just, it's such a learning process to get that right.
That's
getting like that. It was sort of the more critical parts, and the difficult conversations kind of evolved more around the training when we had the time to develop it and, you know, and do it and train it as much as we could.
Yeah. I like that, the way you're describing that process of kind of going from, okay, first of all, we're, you know, not calling each other out, then we're calling each other out, which is barking at each other, and then, you know, eventually developing the kind of ways of communicating. And I think, again, it's the mindset of, why would you accept this? I had a client before that said something that I really liked, and it kind of resonated with me, with that she was saying, like, so as a manager, you know, she was quite a caring person, but she was saying that she believed that tough feedback is a sign of respect. You know, she's kind of like, if I didn't care, I wouldn't have those difficult conversations with you. You know, so it's kind of then developing the skills of being able to be assertive and clear while using it alongside empathy and consideration from others. I think, Jonathan, you've put into the chat that kind of healthy tension with a bit of psychological safety, you know, so the expectations there, and the bit of, being able to have that bit of tension in a healthy way.
And I think, like, that's the real challenging part of your culture then as well, is like, if you don't have those conversations and you don't, you know, so if you go back to the room at the very start of, you know, the journey, and you've listed out your values and your beliefs and your standards and these things, then if you don't, that's the difference between setting the culture and actually living the culture. You know, there's no point in saying all these things and putting them down on paper, and we can all see all these buzzwords of what we want, but if we then don't actually buy into it and you know, make ourselves responsible to live by it, then we're not really creating the culture we really want. And that was difficult for us at the start as well, because we just weren't really used to it. But once you see it, you do it, and you see how much better you get at it, and then you see how the results, you know, come from it. It's you understand then how important it is, and you just keep developing it. Like, you know, it doesn't just stay there. Then you need to, it's a continuous kind of process that you're trying to develop.
Exactly. And I think that's a really good lesson for, you know, if a company is trying to, or a team is trying to put something in place, you know, with the expectation that it's not going to work straight away. You know, sometimes they're like, oh, we tried that and it didn't work. How long did you try for? You know, it's like, obviously it'll be clunky at the start, and it'll feel uncomfortable because you're not used to it, and then you develop the skills.
Yeah, definitely.
But another comment or question that came into the chat was, what rituals have you implemented as a team that have a symbolic meaning and have helped you to develop a stronger culture or unity?
I don't think there's any, like, I mean, obviously we have our standards. We've got our certain things that are like non-negotiables, and they're more, like, I mean, I suppose no egos, things like that. And then you've got things on the pitch where it's, you know, like, you're expected to run as hard and as fast as you can. Like, there's no stopping for a little break here and there. It's work so hard that we shouldn't even have to ever come back to talk about this, because this should just be a non-negotiable. Like, everyone, the minute you step onto the pitch, like, even if you're having the most terrible game of your life and you can't trap a ball or you can't make a pass or whatever it is, you still have the ability to run, and your effort and your attitude is always something that you can control, regardless of whether you can control how well you're playing on the day, but you always can control the effort that you give and the attitude that you have. And so they were like non-negotiables for us that we would have. So, like, rituals, I think it's more the standards and those non-negotiables that we just were like, it's, you know, you have to do these things, because without hard work we have no chance. You know, like, I mean, everyone knows the saying, you know, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. We're not the most talented team in the world, but we've shown with hard work and, you know, just everything else, commitment, passion, all those things, that we were able to get to a World Cup final and win a silver medal and get to an Olympic Games. And that's through all these, like, these non-negotiables that we've just committed to for so long, and knowing that, we're not the most skillful or the most talented team of you know, individual technically, but it doesn't mean to say we can't make up for that with other strengths that we have. And that was sort of, I suppose, what our ritual was, to focus on all of our strengths rather than what we didn't have compared to other teams.
Yeah, and that kind of ties in with some research that say Google did with different work teams, and they tried it out with loads of different teams, and they were finding that it doesn't really matter necessarily how long you've worked with the company, or what your degree was in, or whether you're in the same room or not as your team. It's things like that you're talking about, that kind of trust or psychological safety, is what is the bigger determinants of whether a team will be high performing or not. And another question that's come in is, what's your experience when it comes to handling conflicts occurring between team members in a good way?
We didn't really have. I can't say there was ever any that really stood out. I mean, there was, I suppose, before when I first started on the team, and I think the biggest thing we felt was so this happened at the side of a pitch after a game, and we just lost. Actually, we just got relegated from the Europeans, and two of our teammates were like having a go at each other, and it was the first time that I'd ever seen anything like that. And I just think what I remember was like, this is so embarrassing. Like, this is so embarrassing. The whole other team are staring at us, and like, we're really letting ourselves down here. And I think, that wasn't obviously something that I had to deal with at the time. I was one of these, again, a younger player, didn't have a voice, or so I felt at the time. And it was obviously something that the coaches dealt with, and the captains and things like that. So, and again, that kind of way of operating where it's like very much separated, when actually, those two players were part of a team that they had let all of us down, and really we all needed to kind of talk about it and say, like, look, let's, draw a line in the sand, and let's make sure that this doesn't happen again. And how do we make sure it doesn't happen again? But instead it was dealt with just the management and that kind of thing. And the players didn't really get a say in what had happened. So we haven't had like individual conflicts really between players. I mean, yes, you have sort of disagreements and things, but nothing. I mean, again, that would be where we'd have our player meetings, and if something was to come up, obviously nothing of that scale, but anything that did come up where there was like a disagreement or anything like that, we could talk about it. And if it's around how people feel that we're supposed to play the game, or if it's like a tactical thing, then that's important. Because if somebody's thinking, no, it's this way, and another person thinks, no, it's this way, well, then we're not on the same page. So I think player meetings probably brought up a lot of those kind of little issues that we might have had between players, and anything that was kind of bigger in terms of, miscommunication or conflict between the staff and things. We would have like full meetings together, and players were, and coaches, like, I think as time went on as well, the coaches we had were very open to the feedback, and I think they recognized that in order for them to get the best out of us, they needed to be open to hearing, how we felt we were being given feedback from him, or given information from the coach. So I think in terms of dealing with conflicts between colleagues or players, it's good to sit down, talk about it. And again, it comes down to how you communicate, and how you say what you want to say, and you say it in, and making sure that the ultimate goal is to be able to resolve the issue and move forward, essentially.
Yeah. And so I suppose, like, you were saying you have those weekly meetings, so it doesn't fester, it doesn't,
exactly,
build up over time until, okay, well, I'll talk to them at the, because some companies would say, okay, we have your annual performance review, and it's like, I think a lot of then companies are realizing that that's not enough. You can't leave something for a year, or even
a lot goes on between
and
the next. So I think definitely, like, our weekly meetings were really good for getting anything that we had that came up, or if it was something that was, okay, this happened like before and we spoke about it, but now it's happened again, and okay, if we're talking about it but we're actually not resolving it, well, then you recognize that as well, because it's okay, we've talked about this now 3 of the last 5 weekly meetings that we've had, maybe we need to do something more about it. So you recognize then that as well, if it's a reoccurring thing, you can
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned about that you meet with a sports psychologist with every Monday. Was that with the whole team, or was there any one-to-ones, or
There was, so the sports psychologist, like individually we would catch up, and that's very much on your own, how much you wanted to or needed to see the psychologist. But as a team, it was every Monday, and it was all management, all staff, and all players, like the whole extended group of players. So that was every Monday. And then individually it was just personal preference as to how much you wanted to speak to the psychologist and what you felt your needs were, and they were available whenever, essentially. So
brilliant. Yeah, I think even that is something that's changing over time. I think in the past, if you said, oh, I'm seeing a psychologist, people think, oh, there's something really like wrong that you're trying to, like, and that used to be the focus. It was very much on kind of mental illness, which, obviously is still something that we're, people are working with. But then it's, so, what if you're doing okay and you want to be really, really great? It's kind of going from good to great is sort of a focus now, that it's, you don't have to have anything wrong with you to want to be better. Which I think is a really kind of good shift.
I found the sports psychologist to be great, especially when you're like, well, this year, I had so many injuries, and God, I just, I had myself thinking the absolute worst, and before you know it, like, you're so far down this hole of, everything's not going to work out, and this, that, and the other. And so it was good to be able to stop myself from trying to think too far ahead, even, and things that I couldn't control, and just bringing it back to, okay, what can I control? What can I do? And focusing my, everything that I was doing on that. So directing my focus to what I actually could control today, and just not getting too far ahead of myself with that. So the psychologist was a massive help for me, and I was so lucky to kind of have that. And the girl, Kate Kirby, that I worked with, was amazing. So
brilliant. Yeah. I'm just conscious of the time, it being just 5 to. So I know some people might want to, or might need to drop off. What I'm going to just do is just share my screen there to get the just so that people have information for next week. And then after that, maybe people can stay on for another couple of minutes if you have any other questions. Thank you so much to everyone popping in your questions into the chat. But just to give you a heads up, this is next February. Sorry, on the 9th of February next month, will be this will be sort of like a part 2 to this. So, Nikki's shared so many really interesting insights and, her experience, and that's brilliant. And then we're going to be sort of putting it into, getting tangible tools and strategies of, okay, how do I really put this into practice in my work? Like, I'm not on a Olympic team, so how can I do it? So if you scan that QR code, or the link will be in the chat as well, and you can just register for that so that you get the Zoom link. We also we have a LinkedIn group where we'll be putting the recording. So do join that to stay in touch. There's a couple of different ways that you can kind of keep in touch with us in terms of this group. So you can join the LinkedIn group. You can follow Jigsaw Better Business on LinkedIn. You can follow us on Eventbrite. We have a Never Mind the Buzzwords kind of company page. And you can join the mailing list as well to tick the box when you're registering on Eventbrite. And that will just help you keep in the loop. You might not be able to attend every month, but you can even catch up on the recordings and things like that. So that's just to give you all a heads up of what will be coming next. But I'll pop this off then. As I say, it's in the chat if you want to have a look there. But I've made it so now that well, first of all, I'll just say, for anyone who does have to drop off, thank you so much for joining us. And Nikki, thank you so much again for taking the time out of your day to chat to us. Like, I found it really, really interesting. I'm sure so many other people as well will take something from your insights. Actually, that could be something, if you'd like to, if everyone wants to even pop something into the chat that you learned, or, any kind of something you're taking away from today. It could be helpful for other people if you summarize what you're taking from today. But as I say, we'll hang on for another couple of minutes. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourselves, or you can pop more things into the chat. Let's see. Okay, some people, happen to drop off. That's totally fine. But yeah, if anyone has any other questions that didn't get answered yet, pop it into the chat, or feel free to unmute yourselves. Okay, we got some nice comments and people saying thank you and that they found it interesting and insightful. Sinead says she plays soccer and knows communication is essential, especially with family too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, importance of fun as well as the focus, Shawnee. Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're involved with sport as well, so you've probably seen that, Shawnee. So yeah, I think that's I liked that as a kind of message as well. Okay. Oh yes, there was that question. So someone was asking about, as a professional athlete, things like just about your own kind of habits and, like what time do you get up in the morning? What kind of diet do you keep? What kind of training and rest, sleep, things like that. Do you want to maybe share a bit of insight there?
Yeah. Well, actually, when we moved to sort of the more professional setup, we didn't actually have to get up as early as I did. So probably going back to when I first started in the squad, and I was like college full time as well. I was up at 5 in the morning to be in the gym for 6, and then you went to college all day, and then you're on the pitch in the evening, and then you're back up in the morning. So like when we had, before the World Cup success, we didn't have as good of a program in place where we could be supported to be sort of semi full-time athletes. So it was a little bit harder to balance everything that we had going on. And we were up training in the mornings and the evenings. But when we kind of moved to the more semi-professional setup, we kind of, because just because you get up at 6, it's not to say, oh, people who are professional athletes get up and train at 6. It was just the way our schedules worked and the program that we were in, because actually it's more important, like rest and recovery is just as important as the training. So we didn't really have any of these really early morning starts, because they did want us to have, to focus on recovering our bodies. And that was such a big part that became more important towards the end of my career, where they recognized, like, okay, the body is actually so important, and they'd learned all these things around sports science and how to get the best out of the body, and rest and recovery was a massive part of that, and obviously the nutrition as well. So yeah, we had a nutritionist that worked with the squad, and again, it was very individual. Everyone's different, and everyone's bodies are different, and how they feel can be quite different, and even from intolerances to food and things like that, it was very specific to the individual, like what your meal plans looked like. And like I was probably lucky in the sense I didn't have a really strict diet. Like I didn't have any intolerances or anything like that. And I didn't, in fact, if anything, I needed to probably eat more. And that was sort of nearly a challenge, just like trying to eat so many meals in a day, and topping it up with protein and extra carb loading shakes and things like that. So it's just about, like, everyone knows their own body. So they know when the energy is low. They know that if you're trying to repeat a tough session day, back-to-back days, and you're just not getting the same out of yourself, it's probably down to your nutrition in some way. So it's an individual thing to make sure that what you're eating and what you're getting is right for your body, and that could be quite specific to the individual. But like I actually really enjoyed the whole setup of being a professional athlete, and being so in tune with everything that you're doing, like understanding your body and understanding all these different elements that actually make you up to be the athlete that you are. So yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. I think a few people as well, just in the comments, are taking away that piece of self-awareness is very important, and having confidence in one's own abilities and being able to work to build on your strengths. Another comment is that, would a fair analysis of culture be to also keep it simple? Sometimes we feel we have to go deep in order to develop a positive, successful culture.
Yeah, I think as well, like, because it's such a thing that people talk about, and you hear it more and more now within sports teams, is this culture, and everyone's like, how do they build this culture? And it's the individuals essentially that it's not like, here's the roadmap and this is exactly how you build your culture. Like there's certain things that you want to have in it, but it's the people inside it that essentially build it. And I think keeping it simple is exactly that. Like I think the more you overcomplicate things, the more you overthink things, you're probably not getting the best out of it anyway. So I think, as much as our culture was about the people and, getting the best out of each other, we didn't do that in any sort of a difficult way. Probably kept it fairly simple. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose that keeps it memorable as well.
Yeah.